Hello everyone, welcome to this video, and today we're talking about Shopify. Now, back in January 2023, Shopify made the headlines, and they did so by declaring war on meetings. Now, in today's society where we seem to argue about everything and everything divides opinion, it's interesting that the one common enemy that every human seems to have is meetings. So this new policy by Shopify captured attention. So let's have a look at what they announced, why they did it, and then what we can learn from that from a workplace culture perspective. So what did they announce? Well, the Shopify COO and CEO have been very vocal about what their intentions are with regards to meetings. So let's break it down into a few areas. First thing they did was they cancelled any recurring meetings with 3 or more people. They actually created a bot to do this, and all of those meetings were removed from everybody's calendars. The next part of the policy was that any meeting of 50 people or more had to happen within a 6-hour window on a Thursday, and any employee could only attend one of those meetings maximum per week. Wednesdays were entirely free of meeting days. People were expected to remove themselves from large chat groups such as Slack. They also announced this no judgment zone, which is the idea that people had permission to remove themselves from meetings. Now, at the same time as all this was happening, they also, I believe, launched Workplace for Meta as well. So there was some technology launch at the same time as this change in policy. But if you add all of this up, it's a huge change for their employees. If you can look at your calendar today and imagine all of your recurring meetings with more than 2 people in have suddenly just been cancelled when you go back to your desk in January, that's what it was like for the 10,000 employees at Shopify. So why did they do this? Well, we all know that the amount of meetings in our calendars has shot up following the pandemic. The results from a piece of research done by Microsoft suggest that they've tripled in a 2-year period from February 2020 to February 2022. Now, when interviewed about this, a couple of months after it happened, Kaz, the COO, said that they deleted 330,000 hours worth of meetings when they did this in January. And the way that he phrased this was to say that that's equivalent to them of adding 150 extra employees. Now, the tone of all of this, when we're thinking about the why, from the COO and the CEO specifically, is that they're a company of makers. And to make, you need to be not in meetings. This is really consistent with how they talk about the culture on their website. If you look at this quote from the COO, it talks about being creators, builders, crafters, and it's the same thing. You know, when you look on the company website, it talks about how everyone at Shopify builds products. That's what everybody does, no matter your role. So this is all about creating more time for their employees to spend building product for Shopify. Let's think about what we learned from this then. For me, there are 3 main lessons in terms of workplace culture. The first is, at least they're honest. If you look at their careers page on their website, it talks about chaos in several places, in their values, in their first paragraph when they talk about what it's like at Shopify. The word chaos comes up consistently. And that's the feeling I get when I look at the experience on Glassdoor. When you look at the reviews, the word chaos comes up consistently. There is no doubt that all of the announcements that happened in January and the way that this was released into their organization caused chaos. And that was, if you look at their quotes from their COO and CEO, was absolutely intentional. As Kaz said, you can either go slow and deliberate or you can go fast and chaotic, and they've absolutely intentionally chosen the latter. And I think that's important. I think if you are going to pretend to be something you're not, then I think that's a very jarring experience for employees. If you go to Shopify, you look at their careers site, you see the word chaos come up several times, you go into that organization with your eyes open, and then they release things like this, then at least their experience of working there is in line with how they portray that on the website. Second thing we've learned, it has impacted their culture, but possibly not in the way they had intended it to. You'd think with a policy like no more meetings, there would be a general sense of approval for something like this, given how much society seems to dislike meetings. But as I've been going through all the Glassdoor reviews, that doesn't seem to be the case. There's this concept called Chaos Monkey, which I think is mainly centered around the software engineering industry. But the idea behind Chaos Monkey is deliberately breaking parts of a system to see how resilient the whole system is itself. And what's interesting when you go through all the Glassdoor reviews, and I've been through every single one since January, since this was announced, is there's actually very little dialogue and commentary about this policy. But what's undeniable is that the level of rating that the culture has at Shopify has dropped drastically since January. So if we look at all the other parts of the system that seem to have broken once this big change has happened, there's lots of things like career progression, there's things like chaos, hectic coming up again, lots of changes, too many changes. Line management comes up a lot as well. Nepotism comes up. There's quite a few toxic culture references on there as well. And there's certainly a lot more negative reviews than positive reviews since January. So I think that's interesting. If we think about that chaos monkey theory, they've broken part of the system. They've intentionally created this big change by removing all these meetings and a typical way of working. They haven't replaced it with something else. And that's then started to show other areas of the culture that's broken within the company. The last one for me is this is another blanket policy where it's a one size fits all from the company to the employees with little consideration or engagement, it seems, with the employees themselves. For me, there's so many things that are missing here. What's the impact like on neurodiverse employees? What's the impact like on people that are considering their well-being or are missing those social connections with people? When you remove that thing, meetings in this case, if you don't have a replacement, it causes anxiety, but it also causes more work. People have to find new ways of doing things. Now that disruption might be good. It might lead to new innovative ways of working, but it also is time consuming and it's a cognitive load. And if people are already stressed at doing their jobs, and remember Shopify removed 10% of their workforce last year, if they're doing more work and have less time, removing a way of working and expecting them to create new ways of working in that environment is really, really tough. If the pandemic has taught us anything, it is that the power shift has changed between employers and employees. Before the pandemic, most employers were the dictators. They decided how everybody worked. They dictated how you worked, where you worked, when you worked, etc. And we all conformed to that. That was just the way it had always been done. The pandemic disrupted that. We saw technology deployed at scale. That enabled people to work from home, to prove that they could work from home. But it also gave people much more opportunity in terms of careers so that they could leave their current employer if they weren't happy and work for one that was happy to have a remote-based employee, for example. So our opportunities for changing jobs increased a lot. Our attitudes to work have changed. The Great Resignation, quiet quitting, all of these things point to a change in how employees view their employers and the importance of things like flexibility and culture. People won't tolerate poor company culture anymore. As humans, we are complicated, we're different. All the data, if you look at the trends around workplace culture and what people expect from work, it's paradox after paradox. We want to work from home, we want flexibility, we miss social connections, we miss being in the office. So as an employer, you've got to look at that and think, well, how do I accommodate all of this? One blanket policy applied to everybody is not the answer to that. You can't solve a paradox with one policy. This doesn't mean you need 10,000 different individual policies for 10,000 different people. That's just exerting more and more control onto your workforce. So let's see how this plays out. Shopify announced this in January. It's only March as I make this video. Let's see what we can learn from this over the coming months. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to see more, then please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.